Duardin mine up ahead. Let's bring it down.
Yes, let us bring it down.
Here, lads. Filth approaches. Protect the mine at all costs.
If that mine were to come down, think of the destruction of the local tree population. We can't have that.
Tell us the secrets of the forest. My horn is tingling. I sense imminent battle.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another Age of Sigmar battle report. This one clearly coming at you from Warhammer World. You may recognise the table. This is a 2-on-2 battle with Mr. Remington and I on opposite sides. On Team Andy, we have the forces of the Duardin teaming up with the Sylvaneth to take on Team Remington, which contains Bonesplitterz and the evil, verminous, pestilent forces of Skaven. So the scenario here is that the Duardin are protecting their mine from an attempted assault from the evil forces who are going to try and attack it. It's going to have 10 wounds, and it also has a 4+ save as well. So they can either get into close combat range to attack it, or they can shoot directly into the mine shaft and take out some supports. So of course the Duardin don't want that to happen, and the Sylvaneth know for a fact that if that mine comes down, it's going to destroy countless acres of precious woodland, and they're not having that. So to go through the forces, starting in the bottom right here, where most of the Duardin are located, we have an organ gun, we have 10 iron drakes. At the base of the hill there, in front of the mine shaft, we have a unit of 20 dwarf warriors and Belagar Ironhammer. Next to them we have a large unit of quarrelers as well. Moving left, we have a Tree Lord and a Tree Lord Ancient. I'm sure I'm going to get those two mixed up as the game goes on, so don't worry about that. A large unit of Dryads, and there are some Kurnoth Hunters around there somewhere as well. And I believe a Branch Wraith or some such. Over on the evil side, there are some Trolls, a Giant right next to a Realm Gate. Incidentally, there's another Realm Gate in the opposite corner of the table. And we were using the actual Baleful Realm Gate rules for those, as far as teleporting. So they are going to have some extra mobility, they're not just going to be walking directly into a gun line. At the bottom of that hill you can see there are some Storm Vermin and Orc Araboys. You can just see there behind the tree there is either a weird knob, Wurzgog, Wurzgul Prophet. The fact that Mr. Remington doesn't know the name of his own units doesn't really help me, considering I don't play the Oryx. In the middle there's the Hell Pit and the Doom Wheel, backed up by Azhag the Slaughterer, who we decided to actually remove from the game to start with because we thought it was a little bit uneven the way it was looking, but we decided that if it was going horribly against the forces of evil, then Azhag would possibly swoop down onto the table later on. Next to them there's some Boar Boys. I believe they are more boys because they have the extra weapons, and there's a Snotling pump wagon behind them. Up on the hill in the top left there's a large unit of Orcs right at the top there, and to the right of them there are some Skaven clan rats, a couple of rat ogres, and some kind of Skaven caster on the building there. Here you can see a nice front view of the Duardin forces, a nice peek into the mine shaft there. So those Duardin warriors there are hoping to be the last line of defence. And of course on top of the hill there is all the shooting little artillery battery up there. Not too much artillery, no engineer, so I'm going to have to be quite careful with the organ gun. And there's a look at the front of the main bulk of our forces there, with the Dryads and the Quarrelers in the little valley there, backed up by the Tree Men. And there you can see the Kurnoth Hunters now, all the way over on that flank near the Realm Gate. So a lot of the Sylvaneth protecting that area. And of course they're going to be able to teleport around using all of the Sylvaneth Wildwoods. And we determined that pretty much every tree on the table was going to be a Sylvaneth Wildwood, but that the forces of evil would have a way of bringing those down, which I'll get to shortly. There's a glorious side view of the table. You can see it is quite an amazing sight. Some of the tables at Warhammer World are ridiculously tasty. Mr. Remington actually had some reservations about playing on this table because it was so packed with terrain and it might be difficult to move the models on, but I think it was definitely worth it for the visual feast. So, there's no picture of it yet, but at the beginning, during the little characterful intro, you will have seen that there's a Branch Wraith, or a Branch Witch, I'm not sure which, as it were, who's being held captive by some of the Skaven units. So until we kill that unit, that Sylvaneth hero is under their control and will be spilling the secrets of the woods. So for every turn that we haven't rescued that particular model, D3 Wildwoods will be destroyed per turn, which will limit the teleporting possibilities for the Sylvaneth. And also there are some of their other abilities that have synergies with the wild woods, not just teleporting, so it's going to limit their effectiveness if a lot of those woods do fall. So we are going to be looking to rescue that particular model. So for the first couple of turns I forgot to take pictures of the roll-offs, but they will come in later. The cries of Remington did go up, but as you can see here, the forces of good have acquired the first turn, and Inspiring Presence was used on those dwarf warriors in case they come under any shooting in the first turn, or if they possibly get 2 in a row for the forces of evil. We had 2 warlords per side, 1 for each of these sub-factions, so also Inspiring Presence was put onto the Dryads. And running around in the middle was Cecil the Magical Unicorn, of course. So I haven't really told you what he does yet, but Cecil the Magical Unicorn joined this game because there's so much bloodshed and carnage, and he's not pleased with that because this is the realm of life. So each side is going to be able to move him 2d6 in their hero phase, and then his horn juice will have a 6-inch range, and you can bring a wound back on any model on a 2+, as long as you can get him into range. So we've just moved him towards our forces, because the other side do have quite a lot of large beasties with multiple wounds who they possibly would like to use Cecil's rejuvenating, wonderful horn juice on. So we don't want that, so we've brought him over to our side for now. Then a Mystic Shield was cast on the Quarrelers, assuming that they're going to come under some kind of attack. We do have quite a few Sylvaneth casters, and actually I believe that because the Quarrelers had some kind of standard bearer, we had to actually roll to see whether they ignored the effects of this spell, which is really interesting, but as you can see, it did go off. And when the Quarrelers took aim at the enemy, it looks like they've put a wound onto the Boar Boys, and some wounds have also been done to the Doom Wheel. The Organ Gun went next, firing 3 barrels, as denoted by that dice right there, and it puts some serious woundage onto the Hellpit Abomination. Then the Kurnoth Hunters, who had teleported up into this building here, took aim at the Skaven character atop that building and brought him down with 1 furious volley of arrows. Moving on to the Forces of Evil's turn, and Inspiring Presence was put onto those Savage Oryx right there, on their right flank. And we run out of tokens at this point, but you can see that Inspiring Presence has also been put onto the Storm Vermin. Now, this is quite a comical moment here. It was always a risk sending a giant through a realm gate. Mr. Remington knew that. He also knew it was a risk rolling a skull dice, and shouting the word Remington while doing so, to see if the giant befell some terrible fate on his way through the gate. And of course it came up with a 1, so the giant immediately dead in turn 1. Oh dear, oh dear. So that means that not only is the giant dead, but that means they're going to have to wait till next turn to send anything through that realm gate, because the giant's corpse is just blocking it up. You can only attempt to send 1 unit through per turn, so that is really, really bad news for the Forces of Evil. They were hoping to get behind our gun line very early on there with a big threat, but no, he's just dead. So the captured Branch Witch then spilled the beans. Some of the secrets of the woods were given to the Forces of Evil, and you can see which wildwoods were demolished. So it's D3, and they actually rolled 3. So a wildwood right there was destroyed, and right there, and right there. So they took out all the wildwoods pretty much in close proximity to their own units because of the certain abilities that will kind of lash out wounds to enemy units that are nearby to wildwoods. So they've taken away some of that damage potential. The Forces of Evil then move Cecil the Magical Unicorn towards their lines, but they can't get him close enough, they don't roll high enough to get Cecil within proximity to use his magical rejuvenating horn juice on any of their wounded beasties. You can see there he is right in the middle, working his way towards their forces, but not close enough yet. And the advance is on. The Araboys are moving up there, getting to within range. Perhaps they're going to shoot at the dwarves, perhaps they're just going to shoot directly into that mine shaft. Try and bring it down early, we shall see. In the centre, the Doom Wheel and the Moor Boys are pushing up. The Pump Wagon, with its random movement, struggles to keep up this turn. But I think it did actually move a little bit further, because we reminded Mr. Remington that it is allowed to run. The Hell Pit there working its way around the other side of that little structure, towards the mine shaft. And on the far side, or on the right of this tower, I don't think I took a picture of these clan rats here because they were obscured, but they are working their way all the way around the back towards the whole artillery battery area. Or potentially the mine shaft, if they take a left when they get there. Or, from their perspective, a right. The Skaven escorting the Branch Witch are moving up as well. We'll see whether that's wise, because they are currently holding her hostage, and we will have the opportunity to launch a rescue if they get too close. In the shooting phase, the Araboys take aim, and let's see what they do. they take down a couple of dwarf warriors guarding the mineshaft. So some Duardin blood has been spilt. The blood trickles down into the mines, just reminding them that battle is at hand. The fight has been brought to their very doorstep. Moving on to turn 2. The beautiful foam dice, of course in orange. So in this turn, the Cry of Remington did actually work, and the Forces of Evil went first, which is good for them because they need to close that distance without taking another round of shooting. Maybe get some charges in this turn, and they have got Cecil within range of course now, so they move him, and it looks like either they heal up one of the Moor boys, or maybe they put a wound onto one of the large beasties. But no, it does look like they put a wound back on one of the Moor boys, just priming them ready for charging into combat shortly. Now the Branch Witch spilling more secrets, and again they rolled a 3. So they take out this Wildwood here, next to the Realm Gate, on the Forces of Good side of the table. And I don't think I actually mentioned him earlier, but you can actually see Alric Big Butts is in there as well. Must have missed him when I was going through the forces earlier, but he's just staring down that Realm Gate waiting for anything to potentially pop out of it, or for him to jump in there at some point. I don't know how I missed him with those bright colours, but that Wildwood is gone. The Wildwood next to the Dryads is also gone, and since we ran out of those white tokens, a chess piece was used to denote the fact that the Wildwood next to the Iron Drakes above the mineshaft has also departed. Now, not learning his lesson, Mr. Remington sent another unit through the Realm Gate and rolled a single 1 out of the 3 trolls, so that means one of them just instantly perishes and vaporised by the teleportation process. We'll show you where the other 2 came out shortly. But you can see here the clan rats working their way around there towards that tree lord. I think this might be the Ancient, so they're not going to have a good time if they get into a fight with him. But they could delay him getting into the bulk of the action. The Hell Pit isn't actually dead here, it's just positioned that way because it couldn't balance very well on that piece of terrain. And the Doom Wheel, of course, also moving up. The Moor boys are right there within charge range now of the Quarrelers, and they're also going to have a choice of whether they go for the Dryads as well, so we'll see. I'm sure it depends whether the Pump Wagon and the Skaven forces up there manage to get into the Dryads, perhaps, before they make a decision. There's also the Kernoth Hunters to worry about, which is possibly where those Orc warriors are heading. And here is where the 2 trolls popped up, right behind the organ gun. That was as close as they could get, so they're going to be hoping to push forward next turn to get in there if they can't successfully charge this turn. And just to give you a clue, they did fail their charge, so they're going to have to wait. The Arrow Boys have taken up a position on top of that structure, which means they're going to be able to rain down arrows all across the front lines of the enemy, and the Storm Vermin pushing up behind them as well. And look, the Arrow Boys take out another couple of Dwarf Warriors who still have the Inspiring Presence on them, so they're not going to be worrying about Battle Shock just yet. But the little garrison guarding the mineshaft is starting to dwindle. And now we get to the fun, juicy stuff, the charging. So the Storm Vermin and the Hell Pit both make it into those Dwarf Warriors, and they're not looking forward to that fight at all, those Duardin. Looks like they're going to take some serious casualties right there. In the centre, the Boars do make it into the Quarrelers, so that's also going to be quite a nasty one. But you can see they are slightly limited in how many models they can fit in, partially because of that little pillar there that's blocking, so they can't fit the maximum number of models in there, which is going to limit them slightly. And with the Mystic Shield on the Quarrelers, it's not going to be that easy to take them down. To the left of them, the Clan Rats with the Branch Witch, and the Pump Wagon decide to go for the Dryads, which is a risky move considering if they lose that Branch Witch they're not going to be able to take out any more Wildwoods, but they just want to get in there and get killing things. The Dryads of course will also be ignoring Battle Shock. The regular Savage Aurochs with the big stabber continue working around that side of the table. There's not a whole lot for them to fight over there apart from the Kernoth Hunters, so I'm not sure where they're going exactly. In the combat phase you can see here that the Hell Pit activated first and massacred quite a few of those Duardin warriors. It looks like about 8 of them died as a result of that. The Quarrelers activated next, hoping to take down a couple of the Boars before they struck, and they did actually manage to kill one. It won't limit how many models they can attack back with. Chipping away at them before they butcher us was the motto there. Then the Storm Vermin activate, and how many of the sturdy Dwarf Warriors can they take out? Well, the answer is quite a few. There is only about 2 left in that unit now. Oh dear, oh dear. So that was quite a massacre. It's lucky they're immune to Battle Shock, because they are going to be able to hold up those forces for a little bit longer, purely on the back of that. The Dryads activate next, and they kill a couple of Clan Rats. And they also put wounds on the Pump Wagon. The Pump Wagon goes next, and takes out a single Dryad, that looks like. Then we get to some of the really juicy stuff here. The Moor Boys activate, and they fell 6 Quarrelers despite the Mystic Shield, so that Battle Shock could be quite bad as well. And in the Battle Shock phase, we see a couple of Clan Rats running away. We see 5 Quarrelers running away, which is really, really bad news. And now we head into the good guys, turn 2. So, Mr. Belagar Ironhammer uses his ability to grant an extra attack to all Duardin units fighting those boars, which is going to be quite handy for the Quarrelers, I imagine. And a Mystic Shield is cast onto the Tree Lord. I think this is probably the Ancient, but don't hold me to that. It could be the other way around. Cecil the Magical Unicorn. At this point, we don't move him towards our own lines to heal our stuff, because not many of our multi-wound models have actually taken any damage, so we decide we're just going to make him run as far away as possible from the fight, because they have more multi-wound models than we do. So keeping him away is going to be to our benefit. And you'll notice that this Realm Gate is suddenly looking a bit empty. That's because Mr. Alric Bigbutts has leapt through it and popped out right here, behind the Forces of Evil from the other Realm Gate. So he's going to be within range to possibly strike at the Auric Caster or that Skaven character right there. However, of course, he's going to fail his charge. And Mr. Belagar has moved up, ready to strike. The Kurnoth Hunters then teleport, using the Wildwoods, to behind our lines to kind of plug that gap where the enemy are flooding in, and one of the Tree Lords, or the Tree Man, moves over there as well. Nice cinematic shot here of the Organ Gun and the Iron Drakes looking down over the battle with the trolls behind them. The Organ Gun, though, rolled a 1, so it couldn't fire this turn. Wow, that's why you should always have an engineer, folks. Or a cogsmith, if you will. The Iron Drakes get a bit more luck, however, and you can see what they've done. They put quite a few wounds onto that Hell Pit, and he got 4 remaining. The Tree Lord then uses a shooting attack, with its long branches and roots popping out from the earth, and so does this one. And between them, they get the Hell Pit down to a single wound, so it is right at death's door at the moment. It looks like we're going to be able to finish it off this turn. And yes, the Kurnoth Hunters, I believe one of them decided to use its shots on the Hell Pit and finished it off, which meant the others could shoot at something else. And they put some wounds onto the Doom Wheel, so that is being whittled down slowly as well. The Quarrelers then from within combat take aim, and they put a wound onto one of those Moor Boys with their crossbows. Belagar Ironhammer, in the charge phase, in he goes into the Doom Wheel, and the Tree Lord heads straight into those Storm Vermin, so that's going to be a fight for the ages, I think. So it's looking a bit more healthy now. The Dwarf Warriors being almost wiped out outside the mine shaft left us not feeling too confident, but we have brought other forces to bear on this spot now, and we've taken down the Hell Pit, so it's looking a bit more healthy for now. The other tree goes into the Moor Boys to assist the Quarrelers. So the Tree Lord fighting the Storm Vermin activates first, but he only manages to kill one of them, which isn't very good at all, really. Well, something that's just nagging at the back of my mind that maybe I've been calling this unit by the wrong name, so I just decided to look it up, and I think they are actually the Savage Auric Maniacs rather than Moor Boys. The Moor Boys would be the two-handed guys that are on foot, so I'm sure the comments are going to be flooded with that before they reach this part of the video. So I'll try and keep that in mind in future. Maniacs. So, when they strike, they take down a couple of Quarrelers. The Dryads then take their turn, and they've got the pump wagon. I think it's down to 1 wound remaining now, and they killed a couple more Clan Rats. So that Branch Witch is almost in our possession now. I believe the Doom Wheel went next and put a wound onto Mr. Belagar. Then the 2 remaining Dwarf Warriors at the mine shaft decided to have a go at the Storm Vermin, but they didn't do anything, and then when the Storm Vermin activated, they killed both of those proud Duardin guardians of the mine, and they also put some wounds onto the Tree Lord, who was benefiting from Mystic Shield, so that probably helped him out quite a bit. Sylvaneth do have some quite tasty saves on some of their units. Then the tree fighting the Maniacs takes his turn to swing and takes one of them out with a branch to the face. Then the Clan Rats decide it's their turn to take a swing, and they take out one of the Dryads. Okay, now it's time for Belagar to unleash his legendary fury, and he's got the Doom Wheel down to a single wound. And I think at this point he chooses not to pile in and attack again, because that would be kind of a waste when there's only 1 more wound to dish out to finish off the enemy, so he's going to save that for later. Next up is the Pump Wagon, which does absolutely nothing. Then the Quarrelers, and they manage to finish off another one of the Maniacs. As a result of Battle Shock, it looks like a Storm Vermin has gone there. It could be a Clan Rat. On to turn 3 we go, And here's the roll-off. Of course, the Remington dice loses against the orange power. So Belegar chooses to keep his bonus attack command ability on those maniacs. And an inspiring presence was put onto the quarrelers as well. So, good strategy here, because as you saw, Mr. Belegar was tied up slightly with the Doom Wheel, but since we can still attack it, that might free him up potentially for the combat phase later on. So this tree uses one of its hero phase abilities and finishes off the Doom Wheel, putting a final wound on it. There it is, being removed by hand. Then Mystic Shield was put onto the Quarrelers as well, so we're really stacking up on them. We need them to hold against those maniacs as long as possible. The Kurnoth Hunters then pop out at the top, at the Wildwood or the Realm Gate, I'm not sure which they teleported to, but you can see that Mr. Alric Big Butts is working his way forward as well. So these 2 turns in a row here for the Forces of Good could prove quite pivotal. People do often say that getting the last go at turn 2 and then the first crack at turn 3 in a row are the most crucial in any game of Age of Sigmar. Often that is the case. Of course it depends on the scenario and deployment and whatnot. Again, we just move Cecil further and further away from the action because of all their multi-wound creatures, and we don't have a huge number of them that could benefit from him at the moment. The Kurnoth Hunters take aim, and they bring down that Skaven character right there. That may well have been their leader, actually. So he just dies in one go. The Organ Gun continues its amazing run of form, turning round to shoot at the trolls, but again rolling a 1, so it just can't shoot, due to the lack of Cogsmith nearby. The Iron Drakes have a bit more luck though, and you can see they kill a couple of those maniacs, so we're really thinning that herd of boars significantly at the moment. Then the tree uses its shooting attack, and takes out the Auric Shaman. So those 2 characters that Mr. Alric Big Butts was chasing down have just disappeared, keeping him out of the game. But at least we've taken out some of their spellcasting and leader abilities. Well, whichever unit we activated first in combat must have done absolutely nothing, because the Storm Vermin have the first image here, so what do? Well, some of their models were in range to attack the mineshaft, so they put a wound on it. And they also put a few wounds onto Mr. Tree there as well, he's down to 6 by the looks of it. Then Mr. Belegar goes, and what does he do, you ask? Well, he takes out 1 maniac. Then whatever the Forces of Evil activated next must have done nothing, because the next image is the other tree right here, who takes out another maniac. Then when they get to strike back, what do? Nothing. Wow. Then the Dryads take their turn to swing, and they finish off the Snotling Pimpwagon. Off it goes. And they also kill a couple more clan rats, so I think that might be the whole unit dead now, which means we may have wrestled back control of the Branch Witch. Next up, the Quarrelers take their turn to strike, and they put further wounds onto those maniacs. So they're really dwindling now, and they're surrounded by a lot of hard-hitting stuff. The Quarrelers did a good job holding them up. Stacking up all those buffs on them for defence purposes really paid off. In the Battleshop phase, another maniac runs for the hills. And what's this, you may ask? Well, we're on to the Forces of Evil, and earlier on you may remember that the giant went through the Realm Gate and immediately evaporated and just died instantly. However, because the Forces of Evil have lost quite a hefty number of units here, we decided, you know what, I think the giant can just make his way successfully through the portal now. He didn't just die, he was lost. So he comes in, and he decides to come in right behind that big fight. And the Storm Vermin actually break away from combat with the Tree Lord, and they move towards the mineshaft. They may have an ability that allows them to do that. Cecil the Magical Unicorn moves back towards the action a little bit, because they have still got models they would like to heal, I think. He's had very little impact on this game though, Cecil, unfortunately for him. His magical horn juice has not been sprayed liberally about the place yet. The Trolls, able to move this turn, after the Organ Gun has been such a failure so far, work their way towards it, so they're going to be hoping to get a successful charge there, very, very imminently. And these regular Savage Aurochs, along with those Rat Ogres, have been really out of the game so far, but they're finally working their way back over, and they're coming in towards the Dryads now, who had finished off those Clan Rats and the Pump Wagon. Also the Clan Rats on this flank as well are pushing in, back towards the tree. In go the Trolls, and it's a double 6 for their charge. It looks like they're using my dice to denote that. In they go, crunch, that's going to be really, really bad news. Not only are they probably going to munch through the Organ Gun crew, but also they're now going to be so close to the Iron Drakes that they're going to be deprived of their 2 shots per turn. The Giant as well has a miraculously long charge distance and makes it all the way into the Tree Lord right there, next to the Quarrelers. So that fight could be swinging the other way again after the giant finally makes it through the portal. But those poor rat ogres. Double 1 for the charge. Wow. So they're not making it in this turn. They've done absolutely nothing yet. But more luck for the Savage Oryx. They do make it into the Dryads, and they're going to have a feast. So here's a nice wide shot of where all the action is at the moment. You can see the Storm Vermin have gone towards the mine shaft, and all the other fighting is taking place kind of along the good guys side of the table. Very little left on the other side at all. Another angle here. You can see, of course, that towards the top of the screen there, the Savage Oryx Arrow Boys are still sitting up there, sitting pretty. However, they decide that sitting pretty isn't enough for them, so they charge down into the Tree Lord, presumably to just encircle it to prevent it having any chance of getting to those Storm Vermin so they can whack away at the mine shaft unmolested. As we enter the combat phase, the giant seems to go first, and, well, what does it accomplish? It stuffs one of the Duardin quarrelers into its pants. Oh dear, oh dear. It then chips away on the Tree Lord, so that's down to 10 wounds. The Dryads go next, and they drop a couple of Savage Oryx where they stand. The Arrow-boys are up next to fight, and they put more wounds onto the Tree Lord, who's down to 3 now, so he's not long for this world, you would imagine. He decides to go next, just in case he gets killed. He wants to go down swinging, but he does absolutely nothing. In his diminished state, of course. Then the remaining maniacs decide to fight, and I don't think they do anything whatsoever. Then Mr. Belagar Ironhammer decides it's his turn. He kills one of those maniacs. Then the trolls decide they're going to have a go at the organ gun crew, but they only kill 2 of them, so it can still potentially fire next turn, unless the other one runs away through battle shock. The quarrelers are up next, and they finish off another maniac. I'm not sure there's any left now. The clan rats go next, and they put another wound onto that Tree Lord, so he's only got 2 remaining. He's not going to be sticking around too much longer. Then the organ gun crew are up, and presumably they do absolutely nothing. There's only 1 of them left. Then it's the time for the regular Savage Oryx boys against the Dryads, but I don't think they inflict any wounds. And finally the Storm Vermin are going to have a go at those supports for the mineshaft. What can they do? Oh, they've got it down to 3 wounds! It only had 10 to start with. It had only lost 1 up to this point, so 6 wounds inflicted in 1 turn. Another turn like that, and it's gone. And the way the light's shining, you can see the fingerprints very clearly on that wound marker from Litco. Now back to this combat over here. It looks like the big stabber is going to unleash its fury, and that is an awful lot of dead Dryads. An awful lot indeed. Then in the battle shock phase, look how many of them disappear as well. 6 Dryads running away as a result of battle shock. And we're going into turn 4, and the roll-off, the Cry of Remington goes out. We decide to roll 2 dice per side. Each player rolls a dice and we'll add the totals together, and look at that. So, the funny thing here is that everyone but Remington rolled a 6. So, the Cry of Remington lets his side down yet again by only rolling a 4. So it's going to be the good guys up first, which could be crucial, because if those Storm Vermin had another go at the mineshaft, they probably would have taken it out. So the Branch Wraith looks like in the hero phase took some wounds off the giant. I would assume that's an arcane bolt. And then we move Cecil the Magical Unicorn up onto that building, just really far away from the action, so we can't help them out at all. We have been rolling very high for our random Cecil movement, and they haven't been rolling too high, which is why we've been able to get him exactly where we want him, which is nowhere near the fighting. The Kurnoth Hunters, in the shooting phase, they take down 3 of those Storm Vermin at the mine entrance. So if we can take out that unit, I am very confident that the mine shaft is going to be able to hold on. Now the organ gun with its single crewman was able to shoot, and look at that, wounds inflicted onto the troll. Then it's time for the Iron Drakes to shoot, and a ton more wounds inflicted on the giant. It's only got 3 left, so maybe coming back through that teleporter wasn't the best idea. Maybe he should have just decided to stay swirling round in the portal. Then the Tree Lord uses its shooting attack and kills 3 more Storm Vermin, so they're really being whittled down. Their chances of taking out that mineshaft are dwindling by the moment. The other Tree Lord kills a handful of the Arrow Boys. Remember, they have 2 wounds each, so that's quite significant damage there that's been done. Then Belagar Ironhammer charges into the Storm Vermin, and you can see that the +1 attack command ability was used on that unit as well, and I think he took out a couple of them. Not the ones in this image, there's some separate corpses here that I think he dealt with. Then they decide to go next, and have a go at trying to bring down that mine shaft. And they put another wound on it, only 2 left. This is going to go right down to the wire, because it will be their turn next. Then the Tree Lord activates and finishes off the giant. So yep, it really wasn't worth coming out that portal. He did inflict a bit of damage, but now he's gone down and it's not looking good for the forces of evil by any stretch of the imagination. The clan rats go next on the Tree Lord, and I don't think they actually do anything to him. Next up, he's going to be swinging back, and he kills off 4 of them, and also an Araboy as well. In the battle shock phase, the 2 final storm vermin flee, which means they don't have anyone in the mineshaft anymore. And 2 clan rats run away as well, but that's not quite as important. And an Araboy. So at this point, it was getting late, and the forces of evil didn't have that much left on the table, so he decided, you know what, the only thing that you can really affect the mineshaft with this turn would be the Araboys, so why don't you just try and attack it with your shooting, and then if you don't succeed, we'll win, and of course if you do bring it down, you will win. There's nothing else that really matters as far as the game's concerned, so let's just go straight for that. And they fired their arrows into the mineshaft, but couldn't do anything to it. I think they put a wound on it which was then saved. So the mineshaft survives the game on 2 wounds, the Duardin and the Sylvaneth have triumphed, the forest is going to continue to live, the Duardin are going to continue to prosper in their underground mine, and the Bonesplitterz and the evil pestilent forces are going to be pushed back to lick their wounds and regroup. So there's an overview, quite an epic battle, a lot of comedy moments, and some tactical decision making as well, which is always the best kind of game, where you manage to strike that balance between solid tactics and also hilarity. The deceased giant still resting there on the table, and you can see that Mr. Alric Bigbutts never actually got to fight anybody. You can see him there just below the tower, sprinting towards the fight, but he never actually made it. Remington and I obviously extend our thanks to our 2 opponents, who contributed to help make it quite a hilarious game. It should be pointed out, by the way, that my comrade, the Sylvaneth player, did actually start shouting Remington quite a lot when rolling his dice, and when he did it, he actually rolled really well. But when Remington himself shouted Remington, he would often roll 1s. So I'm not sure whether it's the actual phrase that's cursed, it might just be the person sending it forth. This could well be the last time I take my Duardin forces to Warhammer World, though, because at the moment I'm working on some kind of storage solution for my Stormcast to transport them. Prosecutors, the Flying Knights, Dracoths, they're really, really difficult to transport. They take up a lot of space and they're quite fragile in certain places. So I didn't just want to pack them in anywhere with foam, especially on a train. So I'm thinking I'm going to magnetise the bases and get some kind of metallic-based box that I can put them in, so they won't be sliding about all over the place and they won't get crushed by foam. Because having all the armies on round bases would look a lot nicer. I was just a bit limited at this point. I did try my best to store my Stormcast, but it just wasn't happening in any kind of feasible manner. So that's definitely something I'm working on for next time. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed playing it, and I enjoyed narrating it. It's a shame Cecil didn't come into play more. And I'll catch you next time, folks.
Well done, lads. We've successfully defended our home. I think we can safely say that for the foreseeable future, this mine is mine. Ours. Yeah, that didn't really work. I'm sorry, lads.